Hi, everyone. I'm Helen Stock from the MGA, and today we are continuing our interview series with Brian Crowell, who is the Director of Golf at Osiris Country Club in New York and past president of the Met PGA section. We are going to be answering some instruction questions today, and Brian, hopefully you can help all of us out with our games, but thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to catch up. How are you and your family doing at home right now?
It's been a challenge. I think we're all making sacrifices and trying to figure things out, and certainly that impinges on golf as well. So we're doing the best we can, making some adjustments, and we'll get through this. I know it.
We definitely will. So just to catch up with you a little bit, you have a new role at Osiris Country Club this year, and you seem like usually you're always on the go. So what's been going on? Can you fill us in a little bit on this new role for you?
Sure, it's a little of a return to my roots. That's where I first played my first 18 holes of golf. My grandmother got me a junior membership at Osiris, so it was just the right time. Trying to get back to family a little bit and still stay active in golf and in the Met PGA. So the opportunity arose, and it's a great one. So it's a real fun little 18-hole golf course. It's a private course. It's only an hour from the city, so it's a lot of fun. We've got a great superintendent, and the membership is starting to grow, and it's just kind of nice to be back home in a way. And I'm excited about this year and years to come, especially when we get through this pandemic here.
You wear many hats. In addition to your role as a PGA professional, you have a very significant media presence. You're the host of On Course on Sirius XM Radio. You've written 3 books. You've covered a number of major championships. You've hosted the Met Golf Writers Dinner. I mean, the list really goes on. I'm sure I missed many big things in there, but how do you balance all of these various roles that you're involved in?
Well, first of all, I want to make sure, I'm sure my co-host Frank Darby is out there. This is just orange juice, Frank, so relax. But it is a balance, and we're lucky in golf. I think the golf community has so many advantages, and all those opportunities you mentioned that I've been able to take advantage of have really all come from golf, whether it's radio or books or television. It's all got golf at the baseline, and I'm just so thankful for this sport, and I'm lucky to be involved in it because it does give you a lot of different opportunities. The key, of course, is balancing your time so that you can be successful in as many of them as possible and still be true to your family and friends. And it's a challenge for all of us, but I enjoy having all the variety, so to speak.
Well, you have been involved in, I think, every aspect of the game. Speaking of variety, what do you enjoy the most, if you can pick a favorite in that list?
It jumps right to the top of my mind, and that is playing. I think that's why we all get hooked on the game, that the joy of hitting that clean shot and trying to improve and get better and better scores. I still love playing with my son and the members at the club and in Met section events and pro-ams. The MGA, of course, has so many great competitive opportunities. So playing is certainly top of mind, but I get a lot of joy out of teaching and helping people to enjoy it as well. I think as PGA professionals, we're all entertainers, and we need to create an environment that welcomes golfers and helps to grow the audience. And there's a lot of fulfillment in seeing people pick the sport up and enjoy it and pass it on to their kids. So I would say playing's number one, but giving back and trying to be impactful with the sport would be a close second.
Well, hopefully with the topic of playing and instruction, you will be able to help us all a little bit today. So I have one last question for you before we get to the instruction and really talking golf. But when it comes to broadcasting, you've been involved in a number of different events, the Masters, PGA Championship, President's Cup is on that list. What are some of the most memorable moments that you've been a part of in that capacity?
Oh boy, there are so many. I've been so fortunate to have a lot of opportunities. Ryder Cup, President's Cup certainly come to mind, and covered the U.S. Open as well when I was with NBC a number of years ago. But I would say PGA championships are at the top of the list because of those PGA pros in the field. And I would say to root those 20 PGA pros on and to be able to cover them on a national level is a real treat. Going to two special things, I would say Rob Labritz at the National Club Pro out in Oregon in 2013, holding out that wedge shot to get the 20th spot in the PGA Championship. And for me to be there in a different capacity for Golf Channel and interview him and be there on the spot when he did that was certainly a career highlight for me. And I think in global terms, last year's Masters is tough to beat. Tiger winning in 2019, and who knew he would still have the green jacket in his closet at this point in the year. But it's kind of cool to look back on that historic event and be a part of the call, so to speak. To call his whole final round on all those digital platforms was a highlight for me.
That was a great event. Sometimes when the replays have been on lately, or I think back to it, I still can't believe that happened. But yeah, I can't imagine calling that whole final round. It must have been great. So let's get to some, I bet. So let's get to some instruction questions. You have been an instructor for almost 30 years, I believe, and you have authored 3 books on the topic. So we know you're the expert. We're coming to you for some advice. And we had a number of questions submitted by our followers on social media and on our website. So we will get right into them. But I thought we would start with a timely question, which is, since we're all obviously spending more time at home, practicing putting on our living room rugs or turning our backyards into practice areas, what are a few of your top recommendations for drills or things we can all work on at home, either inside or in our backyards?
I've got a couple real cool things that I'm excited to share with you and the audience. But what I will say first is just a note of caution to everybody out there. I think right now, more than ever, people are combing through YouTube and social media, and they're going through all these different sources to see all the different tips and advice and guidance that's out there. I just, be careful. Don't try everything. Find what's right for your swing. Find an instructor that suits you and sort of speaks to you, and sort of stick with the basics. It is a time that we can be thinking too many things and getting too many thoughts in our head. And I just caution everybody to try and stay down one track. You know what's best for your swing. And if you don't, talk to your PGA professional, but find tips that work for you and stick with that instructor. So that's my first overriding piece of advice. And as far as some stuff to do in the house, I'm going to get my assistant here. So hold on a second. I've got Christina that's going to help me, my daughter. So here we go. What I've created here is a little chipping station that would allow for people to chip in their home. And what I've got down here is a plastic golf ball. I would recommend that for most of us. But you can get a feel for your chipping motion inside if you create some sort of a creative little situation like this. And one of the other things I want to talk about, and I'm going to get in a little closer, is there's another thing that's important. We have so many different things you can do right now, but what you should try and do is concentrate on pure contact. You want to try and make solid contact as much as you can. So what I've done here is I've got a little athlete's foot powder spray. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray this on the face of my club. And as it dries, it gets a little lighter. And what that does is, even in this little system like I've created here in the living room, I can get a comfortable feel for what's happening in my swing. So here's a quick look at contact down there. That was a little bit of a drop kick into the ball, and I could feel that. So a lot of people will say, you know what, I'm not going to get a great feeling with just a wiffle ball inside, but you will. You'll know when you hit it clean, and you'll know, especially if you spray a little powder on there, you'll know where it hits, and you can judge your contact. So there's one way to do it. Moving away from athlete's foot spray, we'll move into some putting. So we got a little chipping, we got a little putting, and oh, come on. Thanks to our friends at Callaway, I've got these nice golf balls here. But what I've done is I've set up a little system here in the house. I cut out a little thing out of masking tape that is 4 1/4 inches. So you can do that. It's pretty simple. And I've kind of put a little zone behind it so that I know how far I'm putting. And then what I want to do is just sort of get comfortable with speed. I want to roll the ball through that hole and not out the back. Okay, I want to try and get used to some speed here. And I'll do that from 3 feet, 5 feet, 7 feet, and just get used to it. And one of the things that I wanted to mention too is I would like this to be the year of, in my humble opinion, I hate when a putt comes up short, even if I'm from 20, 30, 40 feet. I would like everyone to get into the habit of trying to make sure the golf ball gets to the hole. If you'll notice, I started this little zone halfway to the hole. If a ball doesn't get there, I am not happy. I want to have this ball roll over that and make sure it gets back into this safe zone whenever I can. If it goes too far, it goes under the couch, which is a real drag. So that's another good thing to keep you comfortable getting speed of your putts. We talked about finding center of contact with pitching and chipping inside. You can also do that with rubber bands on the face of your putter. So you put one in, you find center, and then you put a rubber band about a 1/2 inch to the left, a rubber band about a 1/2 inch to the right. And now, as you're stroking putts in the living room, you'll know when you're off center. Again, these are ways to practice and really get better and better because you're focusing on nice, centered, clean contact. Very, very important. With the chips, again, I would recommend sticking with just a plastic ball unless you're, Ned Zacker or Hole Shoe or one of those guys. You could get away with hitting real balls in the house. But anyway, hopefully that's helpful. And, I'll keep it brief so we can get to some of the questions, and we'll turn it around and get back to the station here.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are all great tips. I know some of us, myself included, are tight on space, so we'll see if my downstairs neighbors can hear some of the putts rolling across the floor, but those are great and very timely and very helpful, so thank you for those.
What would be ideal, Helen, is if you can get a rug that matches the stimp of the greens of the course you play the most. But we can't get that crazy at this point.
That will be next on our to-do list in a few weeks, maybe. So we did receive questions on a number of different topics, and I will say that we are on Facebook now. So if any viewers have other questions you would like to ask, feel free to put those in the comments and we will get to those as well. First question topic is limited practice time. So the question was, typically between work and family duties, I don't get too much time to practice. What are the most helpful things to work on when I can squeeze some time in on the range?
It's easy to answer and very difficult to answer because first of all, I would say it depends on the player and what they're working on and what they need to spend the most time on. So I would say without knowing who this person is and what their issues are, I would say in general, you want to give yourself plenty of time. Try not to rush. Try and work on the fundamentals. I see tons and tons of people that are practicing at driving ranges and are not aware of where they're lined up or what their targets are. And that may seem very basic, but we see that at the very top levels of the game. Put down the alignment rods. Make sure you know where that station is directed so that your practice is actually going to take hold when you get to the golf course. The other thing in terms of alignment is make sure you identify. Once you're in that station, that's great, but keep identifying with the target that you know it's pointed at so that you get a feel for where you are in space relative to your target. And lastly, I would say try and mix it up quite a bit. Again, the most common thing we see is someone hitting 57 irons in a row. At least at the end of your session, try and mix it up a little bit. Hit a driver, then hit a 7-iron, hit a wedge, hit a 4-iron. If you can, sort of play your golf course or play a course you're comfortable with in your head from likely shots you're going to swing at. And it's kind of nice. So you can play that first hole with a drive off the tee, then a 4-iron in, and the next hole might be a par 3. So mix it up, but make sure you're aligned and you have a good target.
So this is one that I can relate to as myself, but somebody asked, as a relatively beginner golfer, what should I know about reading the greens and where to start?
I would say this. I will say that some people are more comfortable reading greens than others. It comes naturally to certain people. But what I would say to that person is not to wait until they get on the putting surface to start trying to read the green. As they approach the green, they could be 50 yards away, 100 yards away, and start to notice the topography around the green. Where are the high spots? Where are the low spots? It's so much easier to start reading a putt from 100 yards away rather than waiting till you're right over it looking at the green. And if I was to give an overall piece of advice, I would say start reading the green before you even get there. Really take notice of what's around you so that you can get a feel for the tilt overall of the green. Some of them are subtle, and that little piece of advice will help. Another would be to always imagine you're looking at your line, you're looking toward the hole, and you dump a 50-gallon barrel of water right down your putting line. Where do you feel that water is going to flow? Some people get a better feel when they have a visual like that to sort of fall back on. Hopefully that'll help.
Okay, I like that visualization tip. I'm going to try to remember that one for my own game. This one is in from Kevin. He said, I always have trouble getting off the tee. Any tips for tempo using the driver?
Tempo, use it. Well, tempo is important, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to attack this from sequence, because good sequence leads to good tempo as well. So if you'll let me move around here a little bit, I'm going to take my camera girl. So here I am. I'm getting ready to hit a drive, right? So whoever this is obviously has some tempo issues, and it's generally because the tempo is a little fast in the wrong places. So what you want to do, I want this person to really think about their chest. I've had some very good luck with this particular tip. So if they're about to tee up and hit a ball, one thing I want them to remember is that their chest needs to be patient. Someone with quick tempo usually is here very fast, and that starts to affect the plane of the swing. It starts to affect the tempo, because when I get here, there's a feeling of I need to catch up with my hands. That's what leads to flipping and using too much arms. So if you get this idea that your chest is patient, then your tempo starts to get better, your sequence gets better, and you hit better and better shots. One of the ways I've historically done this is to imagine your chest has an eyeball right in the center of it, okay? So if I'm taking my swing, I don't want my chest looking in front of that ball before I hit it, okay? Especially with the driver. I want you to imagine, whoever this is, that they're watching that contact with the center of their chest. That's going to lead to a better angle of approach, angle of attack. It's going to feel better, and your tempo will improve as well. So keep your eye on that.
Next up, a question about hip mobility. What swing adjustments do you recommend for mid-50-year-olds who don't have very good hip mobility?
Mid-50s? That's still young, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Please tell me it's young. All right. One of my quickest things in terms of hip mobility would be the following. And this, it kind of depends on which hip feels tighter than the other. The first thing I would say, I work with this guy, Jeff Poplarski. He is fantastic. You should see someone who's an exercise physiologist. I'm a huge Callaway guy, but the folks at Titleist, TPI is a fantastic website. You should check that out for improving range of motion and some great drills. But in terms of working what you've got, if your hip mobility means you're not able to get a full backswing, the first thing I would do is say, allow your lead heel to come off the ground during the backswing. Generally, if your hips are mobile, I would prefer that's nice and stable. But if you have difficulty winding up, it's okay to give a little bit of of a lift to that left heel so you can increase your mobility. On the other side, there's a lot of folks that have a hard time getting to the finish, and in that case, I would take that front foot and I would flare it just a little. Just a little bit of a flare will allow someone with limited hip motion to get to the finish a little bit better. So hopefully you've got something to work on the back side if you need it, and you've got something to work on the front side if you need it in terms of what that lead foot is doing.
Kind of in terms of mobility, somebody said, I'm always very tight before I start a round and even a few holes in. What do you recommend for best stretches before you tee off?
Well, again, this is not my area of expertise. I'll be the first one to tell you that. I would say this, if you've got tightness and you've got some issues with flexibility, your first challenge is schedule. You should be working on this on your own. Secondly, you should make sure you get to the golf course early enough so that you can loosen up and get yourself ready for the round. If you go to that first tee cold, you're gonna have a real tough time. So I would say arrive early, do some basic stretches. Again, I would probably turn you to my TPI and take a look at some of the great drills and stretches they have available there. But the key is giving yourself the time to stretch before you get to the first tee.
Okay, perfect. Sometimes easier said than done. This I thought was a good one,
Yes.
a tough one and a good question. But this person said, I always have a hard time when bunkers have soft sand in greenside bunkers, especially stopping the ball once it gets on the green. So what's the secret when you're faced with some soft sand?
This is a point in time where you have to really be aware of what your goals are. If you're in soft sand and the ball is sitting down, most of us need to change our expectations for the upcoming shot. Number one, get the heck out of the bunker. Don't worry too much about spinning the ball or knocking it close. You're in a situation where you're being penalized, but you don't want to turn that penalty into something much greater. So number one is make sure you get out. If it's soft and it's sitting down, one of the things I would say is you want to make sure you get under that ball. I mean, this is something where technique is certainly a factor, and depending on the consistency of the sand, you might want to choose a club that has the right bounce, because really what has to happen, this is physics, right? You've got to get under that ball. So you've got to dig down through the sand to make sure you're under it. And then that's going to propel the ball out. The one thing I would say is try to finish your swing. Try to finish your swing. Don't chop at it. Make sure you're finishing, and make sure your expectations aren't so high. I mean, in those situations, especially when you're close to the hole location, a lot of people stop because they don't want to swing too hard. Listen, getting out of the bunker is number one. You're better off getting out and it's likely to roll when you've got that soft sand. So let it hit the green, let it release, and give yourself 10, 20 feet coming back. Don't get too greedy. Greedy makes you tighten up and swing softer or stop. That's not going to help you. Sorry, kind of a roundabout answer there, but change your expectations and make sure you get it out. Don't be upset if it's on the far side of the green.
So this is a little bit more gear related or equipment related, but an interesting one. There are so many golf balls on the market. What do you need to know about choosing the right golf ball to play? And you've been around the game for a long time. You've seen everything that's out there. What's your advice in this regard?
The game has changed quite a bit, and manufacturing has changed quite a bit. I still think there's merit to figuring out what it is you want the most from your game. Obviously, if someone has a high swing speed and can hit the ball a mile, they're not as worried about distance and want more control. And if you're looking more for distance, you should get a golf ball that certainly spins a little bit less and flies out of the gate a little bit faster, so to speak. And there are every brand out there, whether it's my folks at Callaway or another brand, they all have balls across the spectrum that will work best for your game. But I would say if you're if you have the time, go to your PGA professional. They have ball fittings, just like they have club fittings. But if you take your time and get the right one, you'll definitely be better off.
There are definitely a lot of options out there. So other than being custom fitted for golf clubs, what are some drills or techniques that players can use to get some more height on their shots?
You know, again, there is a number of techniques you can use. Certainly, height comes from a couple different things: angle of attack and what the actual loft of the golf club is at impact. And I know there are people that envy that high, majestic trajectory. Let's talk about that question as if it's from a driver standpoint. One of the things you can do without changing your swing is simply putting the ball a little bit closer to your front foot. And as you do that, the one thing I would caution you, as you put the ball further to the front side, you want to rise it up a touch. So the tee should be higher as the ball goes closer to the target. As you get back and you're trying to hit a lower shot, you would tee it lower so that you don't sky it. But one of the quickest ways to affect trajectory is to make sure the ball is teed up in the right spot. And that, I think, most people that are asking that question are thinking about drives. And I would say, really, I would want that tee position to be in a perfect spot before I went to club fitting and started looking for more loft on the driver or starting to look for looser shafts. Start with position of the golf ball, because I love the idea of making sure I'm behind it at impact. I want to avoid this at all costs. So move that thing up and you'll see that the club starts to rise just a hint as it hits the ball. So tee it up and that'll give you a little extra height. Give that a try first before going for a club fitting.
You make everything sound simple enough and easy enough here talking about it. So hopefully we can all get out there soon and put some of this to the test. But thank you, Brian, for helping us out and answering these questions today. Those were sort of the highlights of what our members were asking, and I think you answered everything perfectly. And I know the weather is not great today, but hopefully we can either get outside soon. I know some courses are open, or use your in-home living room drills to keep our game sharp. So thank you again.
For sure. I want to thank you, and a huge thank you to the MGA for allowing me to speak to your audience a little bit. I want everybody to stay positive. We're going to get through this. Enjoy golf. I think it's positioned as one of the sports that is going to really thrive as we get through the coming months. But enjoy your golf, and if you need more help, certainly talk to your local PGA professional. Thank you, Helen.
We will all certainly do that. Thank you again, and we'll see you out there on the course pretty soon enough.
You got it. Take care.